Hello and welcome to this webinar focused on geothermal energy for the weekend by IGC Events in organization with Enerchange and Think Geoenergy. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm the editor of Think Geoenergy, and with me today is Jochen Schneider, the managing director of Enerchange and the editor of TIFE Geothermy. He is also working as a geochemist at his company Hydrogen. He has been organizing geothermal events in Germany for a long time and will hold the 8th Praxis Forum Geothermy, a practical forum for the geothermal sector in Bavaria, the largest or the fastest growing actually geothermal market in Middle Europe, and a very particular interesting geothermal market. I think nowhere in the world have you so many combined power and heat power plants for geothermal. And in that sense, a very interesting market, not only in the context of Germany, but all over Europe. Naturally, with stories of big district heating projects in Munich and elsewhere in the States, a very, very interesting market. And we will hear more of the market and the opportunity and the conditions of the market from Jochen. Jochen, welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, Alex, very much for this nice introduction, and welcome to everybody who is listening to this webinar. I want to give you a brief overview on the market conditions and then jump in the Praxis Forum Geothermy Bayern, what we will do in 2 weeks. So just to give you an overview on Germany, on the geothermal energy, we have here 3 geothermal provinces. We have the Upper Rhine-Graben, probably one of the most hottest regions in Middle Europe. We have here the huge northern German basin, and just here below the Bavarian Morass basin. We have here lithologies in the Upper Rhine-Graben sandstones, in the Bavarian Morass basin, Jurassic carbonates, and in the northern German basin we have, yes, in the end, many different formations which could contribute with geothermal waters for heat and energy production. The most popular is probably Jurassic sandstone. We have high geothermal gradients in the Upper Rhine-Graben, especially in the Karlsruhe and Landau area. We have moderate gradients in the Bavarian Morass basin, as well as it is expected for the northern German basin. The flow rate in the Upper Rhine-Graben is intermediate. We have very high flow rates in Bavaria, whereas in the northern German Morass basin, not so much is known about it. Just look at the plants and the distribution of the power plants and heat plants in Germany. We have in the northern part mainly heat plants, and towards the south also some power plants or combined power plants. In total, we have 37 plants in operation in Germany. There are 27 heat plants. There are 2 power plants. Actually, these power plants are all moving from pure power plants to combined heat and power plants. And we will now focus here on the southern region, the Bavarian Morass basin. Just before, let me give you a brief overview how the German geothermal market developed. Before 1998, we had just 6 megawatt thermal installed, and when the Renewable Sources Act was inaugurated in 2000, we saw at first a slow, but then a very fast growth geothermal electricity producing plants, and also within the inauguration of these electricity power plants, the heat plants were developed. So we have very high implementation in 2014. The last one which got online was the power plant in Holzkirchen in 2018. And since then we are waiting. There are 2 which are very close to inauguration now. Let's have a look at Bavaria. The status quo in Bavaria, as you see here, the overview, the red dots you find here, these are all the plants distributed all over Oberbayern, as it is called. And pink dots, these are plants under construction, and just here in this region there are 2 failed wells in the end. We have 23 plants in operation with in total 325 megawatts thermal and 33 megawatt electricity. We have 16 heat plants. We have 5 combined heat and power plants in Bavaria and 2 pure power plants, whereas 1 at the stage becoming also a combined heat and power plant. In the end, this is a very important story here also for the publicity. They are not accepting here, the people are not accepting in Bavaria pure power plants. They also want the heat to be used. Interesting is this area. In this area, there are all the power plants and combined heat and power plants. I just want to call it the Bavarian power belt. We have here temperatures above 110 degrees. We have drilling depth of 4,000 to 5,600 meters. We have flow rates of up to 160 liters per second and a very low mineralized water. This is probably the most interesting story in the carbonate formation, which you see here in blue. It's a water which is very low mineralized. There are just 2 exceptions, but in the 21 installed plants, you always find this water which is of glacial origin. And the more you come to the south towards the Alps, it gets hotter. Let's have a look at the new developments in Bavaria. We have actually, especially here in the eastern part, many new plants. Some of them are very close that drilling can start. And these yellow arrows, these are all the power plants. Some of them also as heat power plants, and just in the vicinity of Munich and in Munich itself, you see the green arrows where heat plants are planned. We did, during the Praxis Forum, always request to the operators what they are producing, and then we put together these dates, and we have in Bavaria in 2017, they produced 872,000 megawatt hours of heat and 136,000 megawatt hours of electricity. And for whole Germany, we estimated about 1 terawatt hour for heat and about 160,000 megawatt hours electricity. The potential for heat and electricity is manifold in Germany, and there are in all areas still very nice spots where you can join the market, come into the market. I now want to leave this presentation and move shortly on to the Praxis Forum Geothermie Bayern, which will take place south of Munich in Pullach. Here is the heat plant located. They are planning also a new combined power plant in the south of the community. And I want to introduce the program. We are here in the Praxis Forum. We will have a hybrid event. There are, due to COVID this year, just only 50 persons at the Bürgerhaus in Pullach. And I hope many more will follow online. We will have at first the welcome. And here we will introduce the initiative which was started by the operators, which is called Heat Change by Geothermal. And we will have a presentation by Dr. Martin Pehnt, who is the director of the IFOY Institute, and they are developing the funding programs for heat utilization in Germany. This might be a very interesting presentation because there will be significant changes. And then there will be Benjamin Richter from Rödl & Partner, who will speak about all these changes in the jurisdiction, what happened in the last month. Then we will have a look here at the second forum, which will be after a break. We will have a presentation by MTU Aero Engines. They are in the north of Munich and exploring if geothermal heat might be an option for the heat supply of the company. Then we are looking forward to the presentation of Peter Keglovich from Wien Energie, who will introduce the Geotief Wien project. And Maximilian Keim from the Munich School of Engineering will follow up on last year's presentations of the Economy Minister, Hubert Aiwanger. He will introduce how heat transport networks might work. Another presentation will be by the Stadtwerke München. They will introduce Middle Europe's biggest heat plant, which is in the middle of Munich. And here what they are going to use for extraction. They will offer heat, they will offer cooling from geothermal, and they will also have a heat storage there. We will then give the geothermal energy prices to the operators, where we evaluate the best operating plant in 2019, and here also the Christian Hecht Prize will award young scientists. Very interesting is also the session about combined geothermal heat and electricity production. We will have here a presentation about the Renewable Sources Act from the German Federal Ministry of Economy and Energy. We will have a look at geothermal plants and the optimization of the cost for electricity. We will look at the new plant on Garching an der Alz, which is presented by Oliver Friedlander, the operator of Selenos Energy. Turboden will introduce number 6, the power plant number 6 in Bavaria, and then a presentation about energy from house to your home. This is one of the new projects by Bernhard Kubo, which is actually ready to drill. And very interesting is also the presentation by the Stadtwerke München, which introduced the development from the pure power plant to a combined heat and power plant in Stockach. Just have a look at the software which we will use. It's Hopin 2. Here you get the reception, you get the entry to the online presentation. We will have here the stage where all the presentations will start. We have the networking opportunities. If you log in here, you can meet other people, and then we have a virtual booth by our sponsors. Also, they have the possibility to present and to give a presentation, a live presentation, and you can interact with them by the chat. Nearly the same is it for our other sponsors. It's for Turboden and also for the Northwest Assurance, which is the global insurance broker, which is doing a lot of projects here, Bavaria. So I come to the end of the presentation. I'm looking forward to welcome you here at the Praxis Forum Geothermie Bayern, and yes, I'm ready now for any questions.
Thank you very much, Jochen. We will. So you have the opportunity to ask some questions if you want in the chat function of the webinar software. But in the meantime, kind of before we get any questions, maybe a question to you, Jochen. Naturally, the changed environment for events is a challenge, and I see that you kind of really set up a really interesting approach with this software platform here. How do you kind of in the setup of this system? How does it allow people to interact and provide the opportunity to engage on this, well, clearly interesting market for the geothermal sector?
The possibility is to come to the Praxis Forum or to see the Praxis Forum, get in touch with the people, with the players here. Also, this might be an option by the networking function, by Hopin 2. You find at Tiefe Geothermie lots of information about all these projects. We can also help you and introduce you to several project owners.
I mean, essentially, it is about kind of utilizing the system that is there and for people to engage. So I would encourage the participants of the event to really utilize the opportunities that you have within the platform. You see who's registered, you can engage with them within the system, but you can also naturally email and get in contact with people. So that's very, very crucial. So thank you very much, Jochen, on this, on making this event happen. Last but not least, in these difficult times, but maybe touching upon a little bit your presentation and Bavaria. I mean, this is clearly, let's say, the currently key market for geothermal in Germany, and I think, as you described, also is really the interesting part of the combined geothermal and power sector. But in the current situation, how realistic do you see that these new projects will see the day of light?
Well, I think especially if you look here to the east part, I think they will all start drilling, and I'm sure that in this region we will see an enormous growth, because all these plants are planned with 4 wells, and this means you get around 10 megawatt electrical power and also lots of heating capacity. And if you just look at the region and the district of Traunstein, where all these power plants belong to, this is exactly the energy they need there in this region, due to one thing is the climate change, but Germany also decided to step out of the nuclear power energy production, to step out of I wanted to say fossil, but it's just the coal energy production, and so in this region they have to look how they can produce energy. This is also the challenge for many regions in Germany. They have to look at their energy consumption and how they can generate it, and this is also a huge chance also for geothermal, especially if you look at the heat generation in Germany. There is still a very big gap. Most of it is produced with fossil fuels, and geothermal has here really big chances to get into the market.
And maybe in this
the only technologies which can provide heat.
Maybe in this context, I mean, I think for people that don't know, this approach to this combined power and heating production, are these projects set up in a way to purely benefit from the power price provided by the feed-in tariffs, or is there a clear value proposition in the heat plants only, or why do they decide to do both?
Well, the thing is, if you want to start into the market, the power is the best option. As soon as you finished your wells, you did your testing, and you completed your power plant, you get a revenue due to the Renewable Sources Act. And this is guaranteed for 20 years. And it's just under discussion that it will stay the same, and the digression what that was planned is just moved to the end of next year, and it's also reduced the digression from 5% to 2%. But to step into the market, power is very, very important in Germany. And this is see also from this graph. Many plants started with the idea installing power, but some did not manage to build a power plant so far, as for example in Kirchweidach, and they just had this huge glass house next to it where they grew tomatoes and cucumbers and everything. And they were really very good on utilizing the heat. And this is also the idea in the end for geothermal, that you get a quick start with power, and in the following 20 years you have to build up a heat distribution.
There's a question here, likely from an Indonesian friend of ours. The question is kind of how big is the contribution of geothermal in Germany? Or I mean, as we see let's say the geothermal utilization in Germany is relatively centered around the southern Germany and I guess the Upper Rhine Valley to the southwest. How is the overall contribution of geothermal both in Germany and maybe more locally?
So in total in Germany, it's very low for electricity. It's nearly nothing. This is a bit the problem of geothermal energy in Germany, because we have this nice resources here. You cannot compare it with something you have in Indonesia or in Iceland, because you have this high enthalpy resources, and we just have these maximum temperatures. I think I showed it here just before, and we have maximum temperatures in the Molasse Basin, I think, with 155 degrees. This is the Holzkirchen plant. But I think locally it plays a major role. Just if you look here in the east to the district of Traunstein, geothermal can make up to 30 to 40% of the energy demand of this district, and it's really a local options for many communities.
Understand. Okay. Then was here's a question. I mean, that touches, I guess, about some of the challenges involved. I mean, and the concrete question of I guess in that context of how to revive, let's say, a dry geothermal well. I mean, there's a good example here of a project that is kind of looking at an alternative to make a dry well work. I mean, where the heat was found, but not the water. I assume that they will talk about gated treat and the plan. What's your opinion on this closed loop element in making this work in the German context?
Yes, it seems to be an interesting option, especially in the Geretsried, and I'm really impressed how they did the drilling in their pilot plant in Canada, very exact and precise, meeting two wells in the subsurface, and this might be an option for such areas. What you also might use is still the heat from if you do not have enough of water, for example, you may just use the heat, but there are a few options. There was one by the RAK, which did how do you call it, sonde?
Like a heat pump, I guess.
Yes, in the end, like a heat pump setup. However, it's not so perfect working like if you can find the water. Here in Bavaria, you really have the great luck that you nearly find everywhere water. If you drill to the formation of the Upper Jurassic, here it is, there is so much water in this formation, and it comes here from the north where it outcrops. But the interesting story, the water comes in the end from the Alp and was circulating or percolating down through during the glaciation events by fault lines in this formation where it's still circulating.
I mean, this is, I mean, I guess for the international audiences, it's absolutely stunning how deep drill in Germany for geothermal and still make it economically viable. I think that's a very interesting case of Germany, and I think that's then I think mostly driven by the favorable feed-in tariffs, correct?
Yes, exactly. This is the main story. However, if you compare, for example, the drilling prices to the international prices, we had this event in Turkey, and when they are introducing there what drilling costs are, this is also a big difference.
Yeah. And in that context, here's a question that's probably a bit far out of the ballpark, but kind of what would you say, like, I mean, as an investment opportunity, geothermal in Germany? Here's the question of how long the payback period is of a medium-sized combined heat and power plant. I mean, is that something that you'd be able to answer, or at least give an indication on the economics of a geothermal project in Germany and why this is attractive?
Well, the one thing is the electricity production, but if you manage also to sell the heat, you really can achieve very good prices from geothermal in Germany. And if you have two products to sell, the project becomes more viable.
And I mean, in that context, maybe you can also talk a little bit. I mean, there has been a lot of investment in Bavaria by developers, and I think an interesting case was, I think it was 2 years ago, that the city utility of Munich actually bought operating plants from the operators and the investors. I mean, that also shows that there was a case of an exit that provides a kind of like yet a different investment story.
Yes, I think the biggest problem also in the Molast Basin is the fear of the risk. However, from the hydrochemical point of view, there is enough water with exactly this mineralization as described. And if someone is taking the risk of drilling, it will work. There are enough investors. This might be also funds and also insurance companies, utilities, communities, which might be interested to invest in a geothermal project, so to have the hand on their own power.
Yeah. But I mean, you write here on that slide like the low mineralized thermal water, so that basically, you know, excludes opportunities in lithium in Bavaria.
Just can use the thermal water for electricity and heat production. However, if you look at the Upper Rhine Valley, there is this mineral extraction story, and this becomes much more interesting. So you have 3 items which could make your project viable.
But this then also adds a lot of other challenges, correct?
You have this high mineralized waters in the Upper Rhine Valley with 100 grams per liters, and you have these corrosion issues and scaling issues, which you also have some scaling issues you also have in Bavaria. There are very interesting developments regarding CO2 injection to reduce the scaling risk, or also inhibitors are developed, which are very environmental friendly. What is one of the preconditions from the authorities they didn't want to have if an inhibitor is used.
I mean, very exciting stories here from Bavaria. Maybe coming to an end, the question here, the Praxis Forum. Naturally, I mean, you've doing this now for 7 or 8 years. Been involved in geothermal in Germany for much longer. Compared to, let's say, 5 years ago, where do you see the geothermal industry today, in a sense of its success and reach?
Well, perhaps we look back 10 years ago, and the development was quite quickly. 10 years ago, there was a kind of a gold rush. It stopped in a way. The development. We had the global finance crisis. Then we had a stupid discussion by 2 German ministers where they questioned existing plans if the feed-in tariff is still valid, and the investors just went away. But we see it already here in the development in the last 5 years. There were not so many plants going to operation, but just yesterday we was sitting together with a colleague, and we put together the numbers, and these are really these 16 plants proposed here, which will contribute in the next years, and we will see something in Germany which just was some 50 years ago, when we had these high times in drilling for oil and gas. We will have 4 or 5 wells at the same time to be drilled. So there will be 4 or 5 rigs at the same time. And I think we have now a very stable situation. We had this COVID-19 crisis, which affected a lot the other branches, but we are speaking here about the energy business, and the projects are still going on. If we just have a look here at the Garching and the Alps project, they planned to starting operating in September, and it will be in October. So we have just a delay of 1 month, and they did a great job regarding the construction of the power plant.
You've been breaking up a little bit in between, so maybe just one last question. I mean, it is very obvious that Bavaria continues to be an exciting market for the geothermal sector, and I guess also for the energy sector in general. But there has been, let's say, increasing political interest and support. Last year, there was the plan announced on a master plan for geothermal in the state. This has become more concrete recently. Maybe a few words on that.
Yes, that's true, but it's not a direct support. It's a support for the district heating, or it's a support for big connection lines for heat, and so the market is open. You can compete with all other sources that could provide energy, and I think geothermal has here, especially regarding heat, a very strong position. And just if we look again in this region here, we have here the project in Kirchenschöring, which is very close to drilling, and they want to provide heat also for Salzburg. And just the district of Traunstein, they are thinking of a big heating network where all communities can profit from. And the geothermal plants will deliver here a major contribution. And I think another example is just Munich, but we see it also in other areas that heat becomes more and more a really important source. Also, the just this week announced plans of the EnBW in the Upper Rhine Valley, together with the Mannheimer utility. They also have a big network to fill with renewable heat in the end. The question is, how can we make the district heating green? And I think geothermal is here in the front position.
So I would assume that if you look at this, and we see all the things that have happened in Munich and in Bavaria itself, both heating and power, that this is an interesting really market, both to explore but also to learn from. So with a lot of these projects in the Netherlands, in Denmark, Sweden, and elsewhere in Europe, clearly here Bavaria is an interesting example of how things could be done and are done. And with that, basically, the Praxis Forum is a fantastic venue to learn more about these projects that have happened, the plants that are operating, and the projects that are in the pipeline. And I think with that, if there are no further questions, hang on, here's one more question. Yeah, so maybe then before we close here, an additional question to understand this, but there is no state support regarding the risk involved in geothermal at the moment, correct?
Yes, this is correct. There was once a state support developed. Also, some people of the geothermal industry were involved in that, but in the end, this did not work. And now Germany is here one of the states which has no state support regarding the risk.
Well, now come the questions. So Jochen, hold on.
Here's another time.
So here another question. I think this also touches upon something that we talked earlier this week, the notion of the geothermal sector and addressing local opposition to projects. And how is the general acceptance of geothermal in Bavaria in general, or what could we do better for better acceptance of these geothermal projects?
Well, one thing we learned, that the people want to have a sustainable as they say, a sustainable product in the end. They want to, the power, it's not so popular. They can have any benefit from a heating network. The question really from the people are, can I connect my house to the heat which comes from the geothermal plant? And I think here we have to find answers and solutions. And in my opinion, I think this is possible, especially if you are involved in a bigger heating network, which is planned here in this region around Traunstein, east of the Chiemsee. So you really have to think about incentives, and we should develop together some ideas how the people at the power plant stations, at the heat plant stations can profit from it.
So, I mean, I guess it's just really pushing the narrative how geothermal can positively impact the lives and quality of life of people locally. And I think that's the key message, I think, everywhere. And I think that's also the responsibility of the sector and the developers to make sure that this is the case.
Well, one of the first pictures I saw, or I still have in mind when I came to geothermal, was the picture of Reykjavik in the 1930s. You have this dark dust on the city from all these fossil fire plants, and then there was the next picture. Now everything is geothermal. And I think this is the big chance we have, that we really can improve the air at the locations of geothermal power plants.
And interesting enough, both heating and power. And I think, and in that sense, I guess Bavaria is a fantastic showcase. So I guess with that, I think if there's nothing else to add, there was no further questions. I think all that there's left to say is that if you want to learn more about the event in Pullach, the Praxis Forum Geothermie Bayern, just click on the link. The will be provided in the video that we share of this webinar. Join the Praxis Forum. It is one of the key geothermal events in clearly one of the key regions for geothermal in Europe.
Middle Europe.
Yeah, and with that, I think we'll leave it to you, Jochen, for a few last words.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you to all for your interest. Thanks, Alex, for your sharing this session. And I want to introduce the next webinar in 1 week. It's about the fiber cable, which was introduced in a geothermal plant in Bavaria. And here, a PhD student, Felix Schölderle, will introduce what they did and the first results. So thanks a lot to you all. And bye-bye from my side. Hope to see you in 2 weeks at the Praxis Forum.
Excellent. And as a very last word of me, always need to have the last word. Check out the YouTube website of EnerChange, where you will find this recording of the webinar, but also past recordings of previous webinars that should surely be of interest. With that, thank you, Jochen, and all have a great weekend. Thank you very much.